Good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to the Tropical Outlook for Saturday, the 29th of June. And we certainly have got plenty of activity going on in the Atlantic at the moment. It's still early. We still have 97% of the hurricane season left to go. But it looks as if we have got not one, but two systems to contend with. In fact, we've actually got three when you include Beryl, 94L over the Western Caribbean Sea, and also disturbance number two, which is between newly formed tropical storm Beryl and the African coast here, seen by this infrared imagery showing plenty of activity, unusually so for the time of the year. You typically find that water's just a slight touch cooler across the central and eastern tropical Atlantic. We've also got plenty of dust at this time of the year normally, and also shear can be an issue widely at this time of the season. But not in 2024. We do have got record breaking warm sea surface temperatures ongoing in the Atlantic. That's been the case really for about a year now. And we also have an unusually robust African easterly wave train going on as well. Some big disturbances rolling in off the African monsoon trough. So let's get right to it. This, like I say, is a tropical storm Beryl now, really starting to ramp up. Nice symmetric shape, nice blow up of deep convection here, and it looks as if there is some very, very good spin within the system as well, looking very healthy. And this is now currently moving westwards at around, well, let's see here, moving at around 21 miles per hour. So in the last 3 or 4 hours or so, came off the night shift last night, and between going to bed about 4 hours roughly ago, and now the wind speed has now increased by around 10 miles per hour, both in terms of maximum sustained winds and also the 21 mile per hour westward movement here. It was going at around 18 miles per hour. It's now at 21 miles per hour. Central pressure is slowly dropping as well. It's about to drop into the 990s in millibars here. But you can see here, this is 94L. 94 L is expected to potentially develop over the next couple of days. The National Hurricane Center give this a 40% chance of formation. It is going to cross over the Yucatan Peninsula, move into the Bay of Campeche, and that will provide a window of opportunity. Relatively moisture and also low wind shear means that this has that 40% chance of development here. Meanwhile, across the far east tropical Atlantic, we have a 10% chance now. This went from 0 3 or 4 hours ago to a 10% chance of formation over the next 48 hours. Very, very unusual to see this sort of activity well out over the central and eastern portion of the tropical Atlantic at this time of the year. You normally don't see that until later in July, and particularly so into August and September. Also notice how far south the line of convection is. The intertropical convergence zone is in fact further south than you would typically expect to see in terms of activity. The reason for that is simple, that we're still in the early portions of the summer season. The mean mid-level pressure, high pressure system extended from the Bermuda Ridge all the way across to the Azores Ridge. All that main belt of high pressure is actually still continuing to migrate northwards, and therefore the ITCZ, the area of convergent winds that these systems that roll off Africa, cross over the Atlantic, and head towards the Caribbean and the United States, that all has to shift further north still, and therefore it is simply a time of the year that you don't normally see this much activity, and therefore you would normally see it further north. So you can see here quite a large area of convection over Central America at the moment here into the southern portion of the Yucatan Peninsula, Belize as well. We've got a lot of heavy rain and thunderstorm activity going on here. it is a broad scale area of low pressure, nothing particularly tightly wound and not a closed system. So therefore, it remains an invest area where the National Hurricane Centre will continue to monitor this system as it moves across the Yucatan Peninsula through the course of today and into the overnight period here. But there is a small possibility that this thing creeps into the western portion of the southwestern portion of the Gulf of Mexico and perhaps it tries to develop here. If we click on this system, you can see a little bit more information with regards to potential development here. So we shall wait and see what happens. It's got a 24-hour window roughly before it moves over land and eventually fades away, just producing heavy precipitation. Let's have a look and see at Beryl, and let's have a quick look first and foremost at how the system is looking up close. And we can see here some very symmetric convection and also continuation of flare up of intense thunderstorm activity within what appears to be a center now starting to go underneath that canopy of convection, which means that it's becoming better and better organized here. There was a little bit of easterly shear during the overnight period into the early portions of this morning, but that is going to start to relax here. There's not a huge amount of dry air associated with this as well, and over 27, 28 Celsius water temperatures as well. So it looks as if it is looking likely that this will become a hurricane. And if we look at the NHC projection for Tropical Storm Beryl, it looks as if it is going to become a hurricane now by around 2 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning. This actually was, this is all getting pushed forward in terms of the progress of Beryl, the strengthening, and the potential strength as well. This is all getting picked up now, and by Beryl becoming a hurricane before it reaches the Lesser Antilles, which are here, and is expected to do so during the course of Monday, this would be the first time in recorded history that we've had a June hurricane form to the east of the Leeward Islands. So this is very rare stuff, actually. Um, not not often do you see this taking place, and this obviously means that the Lesser Antilles need to start preparation now for this system moving through the area, central and southern portion of the islands, may I add, and then it's going to head into the Central Caribbean, and then once it gets into the Caribbean Sea, there is several variables to consider with regards to both strength, track, interaction with dry air, wind shear environment as well, and how strong the system becomes will determine its ultimate destination potentially as well. A stronger system moving through the Eastern Caribbean Sea may force it to turn a little bit more north, heading towards Hispaniola, which is obviously Haiti and the Dominican Republic. There is some very complex and high elevation topography in this region, and that is likely to cause the system to weaken if it turns north. If it stays slightly weaker, it is likely to stay further south here. Tends to be that systems become strong, they start to interact with the upper levels of the atmosphere, they start to feel steering winds that tend to try and pull the system northwards. And there is a possibility that this actually takes place, and the reason for that is because everything is getting quickened up, sped up in terms of the projections here. NHC showing the system becoming a hurricane quicker. It is also expected to be stronger, and also that would lead me to think that it's going to take a slightly further north turn. Now, I don't know that for sure yet, and obviously by the time it gets into the Central Caribbean Sea, there is weather across North America that will restructure the atmosphere to the north of the system as well. We've got a trough potentially dropping in through the Bahamas off the southeast coast of the United States as well. And it depends on the strength, position, and whereabouts Beryl is, will ultimately determine the outcome and future movement of the system. So here is the global and hurricane models with regards to track, and you can see that the general consensus is now in the southern portion of the Leeward Islands. Again, there was a little bit more spread not that long ago. A few hours ago, it was taking it more the spread between the central and southern portion of the Leeward Islands. It's actually a little bit further north now, but the general track takes the southern portion of the Leeward Islands into the heart of the Caribbean, and the question mark will be how close does it get to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Through Jamaica, it is likely to make a very, very close call. And then as it moves into the western portion of the Caribbean Sea, the models see a fairly quick weakening of this system. And the reason for that is because we're going to start to see a strong southwesterly shear. There is a trough expected to drop into the region to the north of the system, and that is likely to trigger southwesterly winds and therefore competing winds. Wind shear, obviously, it's a change of wind speed and direction with height through the atmosphere. When systems develop, become strong, they want to have some nice vertical structure, multi-stacked, a nice closed circuit, tight circulation here. And when you've got wind shear, you've got winds coming in at different angles, different wind speeds. That disrupts the overall structure of tropical systems. So that has to get obviously taken into consideration here. Looking at the GFS ensemble, and you can see this is the overall solution. 1007 millibars initially, then over the next 48 hours it's expected to drop to 994 millibars, 992, 997, but then again that is extremely underdoing the potential with this system. I don't know why the pressure is only dropping into the 990s millibars here when we know that this system is going to become fairly strong fairly quickly. Now, the general model consensus shows Beryl becoming a Category 2 hurricane. It actually is expected to become a hurricane by the early hours of tomorrow morning and may ramp up to a Cat 2. Now, you notice here some members indicating a Category 3 or major hurricane, which would be pretty remarkable for this time of the year. And let's have a quick look and see what the GFS model is indicating in terms of relative humidity. So this chart represents brown colors, should I say, represent dry air. We've got obviously the main ridge of high pressure well up to the north at the moment here. There's your steering flow here around the base of this multi-centered ridge of high pressure, one near the Bermuda, one near the Azores at the moment here. We do have a weakness in between, and systems that become strong fairly quickly tend to feel that weakness and try to turn northwards here. There's Beryl right here, and there is a nice channel of moist air extending from Africa all the way to the Caribbean. We do have some dry air to speak about over the central and eastern Caribbean. If you notice, there's 94L expected to cross the Yucatan and move into the 86 degrees Celsius waters roughly. We've also got some very, very juicy water within the track of Beryl as well. So let's have a quick look at the sea surface temperature anomalies here, or sea surface temperatures, in fact, full stop. And you can see here that we have got the waters plenty conducive for further intensification of Beryl. Generally 28 to 29 Celsius water temperatures through the islands into the central Caribbean Sea as well here. In terms of 94L, we've got 29 Celsius waters and 29 on the other side into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. So here too, we've got plenty of warm and fairly deep warm water at that as well to speak about. So you notice here at this time of the year, typically once you get into the heart of the hurricane season, we're looking at a line between Cape Verde and the northern Leeward Islands through the main islands of the Caribbean as well. These water temperatures are slightly cooler than average, cooler and less conducive for cyclogenesis at this moment in time. You notice here the core of very, very warm waters is down where the intertropical convergence zone is currently at the moment here. So there is basically a non-limiting factor in terms of sea surface temperatures with regards to the future of both disturbance number 2 to the east of Beryl itself, and then obviously 94L also here. So the general emphasis is on a continuation of this westward track through the course of the rest of this weekend as we move into the early portions of next week. The big question is going to be over the Caribbean Sea itself, and it does look as if the models indicate a significant weakening as both TD2 and Beryl move to the west of the islands here. So let's track this, let's follow it. GFS, you can see here that we have got plenty of dry air, but it's well to the north of the system here. Here comes Beryl as a 967 millibar area of hurricane activity, winds. It's tightly packed, it's strong, and it would not surprise me if this becomes a Category 3 hurricane as it's moving through the southern leewards by the time we reach sometime later on Monday. Then, as it moves to the west of the islands, the pressure drops further to around about 963 millibars. And then notice something in this frame here. Notice I go from 963, so keep in mind this is Beryl here. Might be a little hard to see, I do apologize for that. But notice here that the pressure goes from 963 to 968 to 977. It is possibly interacting with slightly drier, but also the mountains of Hispaniola. You notice here that the GFS has it fairly close to Hispaniola, possibly due to a little bit of a northward turn due to the intensification of the system as it moves through the islands here. And that's what I'm saying. Systems tend to feel the upper levels of the atmosphere, try to turn right as the systems become strong pretty quickly. Here, following it on its heels is TD2. Notice here that we are seeing some dry air getting pulled in. Now, this is obviously off the GFS model. This is one of many, many runs of different computer models with slightly different outcomes, but we're looking purely at the GFS for today's case here. You notice here that the system is around about 986 millibars. We could have back-to-back hurricane hits on the central and southern portion of the Leeward Islands, almost a remarkable occurrence for this early in the season, but this is what we're seeing. Record breaking warm temperatures, the development of the La Nina. We've got everything seemingly coming together for a big season, and we could potentially have not just Alberto late last week into last weekend itself. We had obviously this disturbance that followed quickly on its heels. That didn't become anything. The environment didn't favor the development of that system, but nonetheless, it moved into Mexico. Now we've got Beryl. We potentially have Chris as well on his heels. And this is already becoming a very active season, given the fact that we're only in late June and moving into early portions of July here. But you notice here by the time we reach next Thursday, so this is a way out, way out. We're looking at a system now rapidly weakening, moving to the south of Cuba here. But I think what's the biggest problem with this is that it's interacting with wind shear here. If we look at the chart of the GFS for in terms of 200 to 850 millibar vertical winds here, you can see that if we skip back, you can see here that it's generally in a favorable environment, no real hostile winds to speak about here, generally to the south, generally to the north here. We've got strong easterly trade winds to the south. We've got strong westerly winds here to the north of the system, play through into the early portions of next week. Notice here that we've got a lack of wind shear within the circulation, slightly to the north, but generally speaking, there is no real hostility. But notice here, by the time we reach early on Tuesday, as the system moves into the Caribbean, we're starting to see stronger southwesterly winds ahead of the system, and that could be the reason why the model sees a very, very quick weakening process of Hurricane Beryl. The reason why is we've got a trough digging south out of the eastern United States in over Cuba, and that is going to start to create the increased southwesterly winds within the atmosphere here. And you've obviously got what is likely to be Chris, to be honest with you. As we move into the period here, you can start to see that the area of hostile environment is starting to close in on Beryl, and therefore it's indicating some fairly quick weakening. Now, as we continue to play through, remember dry air is getting entrained as well. You notice here that the secondary system is also experiencing wind shear as well. So that is the likely reason behind the weakening, rapid weakening at that, of both Beryl and what will likely be Chris. So certainly very busy times. We've still got, like I say, 97% of the hurricane season to go. This is somewhat of an ominous sign. The fact that I said last week's video that we are likely to see a decrease in terms of activity late June into early July is completely going against what I said here. It did look as if there was a large area of sinking moving into this region of the world here with regards to the MJO, but they certainly looks as if I'm wrong in terms of seeing a decrease as we move out of June and into July. But very, very interesting times to come. We will continue to monitor this. I am likely to produce a tropical video early next week in terms of following the track of this system here. Interesting tweet here by Phil Klotzbach, by the way. He went on to say back just a few days ago that the northern hemisphere has only produced 3 named storms so far this year. So this is for the entire hemisphere, by the way. Only 3 named storms that's including the Indian Ocean, the Pacific, and the Atlantic, and this is the fewest northern hemisphere named storms through the 25th of June since 1983. Yet Beryl, forming to the east of the Leeward Islands, will be the first time on record for the month of June, and so it's interesting how we're going from one unusual to another unusual scenario overall. Now, this is another interesting tweet here saying that TD2 has formed in the central tropical Atlantic. That, of course, is now Beryl. But he says that if the forecast verifies that this becomes a hurricane, it would be the farthest east June hurricane that has formed in the tropical Atlantic since records began, breaking the old record set back in 1933. So that is a long, long time ago. But another interesting note that I wanted to show is that I'm trying to find here that just bear with me a second here. So while in general early season Atlantic hurricane activity has little correlation with overall seasonal activity, early season activity east of the Lesser Antilles is generally associated with a very busy season, with a notable 2013 exception. So generally speaking, when you've got increased activity this early in the season, this far east over the tropical Atlantic, it tends to lead to big overall seasons, and we do have big numbers in terms of named storms, hurricanes. A larger percentage of that is going to become major hurricanes likely, and it's simply because of the record-breaking Atlantic sea surface temperatures, the developing La Nina, and other aspects that are taken into consideration as well. Let me know in the comments section below, are you enjoying these tropical outlooks? I do endeavour to follow this season right the way through till the end, following each development, following the potential that each system that develops has, and I certainly hope that you can continue to enjoy the content here on the channel. Live stream 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I hope you can join me for that. Also on Monday, we're going to look at the July outlook as well. That is hopefully going to be released this afternoon. Also, looking at the month of July, it looks as if we have some interesting aspects with regards to the June pattern that we've just seen and the July pattern that we are likely to see ahead as well. Some interesting similarities actually in terms of the overall pattern. But of course, the tropics need to get taken into consideration with regards to the European pattern as well. Systems that try to turn north may interact with the jet stream, likely reshaping the strength depth of the ridge trough pattern as well in our part of the world. That can have significant influence on our weather, the tropics as well. That is likely to become a bigger factor as we move into the second half of the season, of course. But nonetheless, busy times to come here on the channel, busy times in terms of weather as well. So do check out my live stream. Hopefully tomorrow you can join me for that, because there's a lot of things going on around the world at the moment as well. Like, share, and subscribe. See you hopefully tomorrow with more. Bye for now.